Hello and welcome to Alpha Kappa Psi's webinar, Mission Management, How Program Management Skills Apply to National Security. I'm Mackenzie Lalka and I serve AK Psi as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be moderating the webcast today. So before we dive into the content, just a few housekeeping details. All participants have been started with their microphones muted and their video turned off. We're going to ask that all participants keep themselves muted during the presentation so we can hear the presenter. If you would like to turn your video on for other participants and the presenter to see you, you may do so. We do have the chat feature available for you to interact with other attendees and the presenter. When posting, it will share your name, but also consider mentioning your chapter or university as well. After the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A, which you can submit your questions via the chat feature, or at that point, if you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can use the raise hand button on your screen and we will unmute you when it's your turn. So for our program today, we do have Mike Dickerson. He's going to talk about mission management, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer you can see on the slide here. The views in this presentation are my own, based upon my own research and experience in the government, and are not representative of Booz Allen Hamilton, the company, or any U.S. government entity. So with that being said, I am Mike Dickerson. I am the first mission manager for intelligence with the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. Before we talk about what mission management is and how it's different related to program management, we're going to talk about my background and why I'm qualified to be here today with you. So, moving on. I spent 13 years at Booz Allen Hamilton after graduation, where I grew from a research assistant to a lead associate as a management consultant. And my primary focus was U.S. national security, focused on several agencies within the intelligence community. From there, I transitioned as a government employee in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence as their first mission manager for strategy and plans. It's a very broad term, but basically what my job was to take 17 different documents that didn't talk to each other and synchronize them into one cohesive document while also making the process more efficient. And we'll talk about later on as a case study how my work there showed what mission management could actually be. And finally, this past summer, so almost a year ago, I started with the Joint Chiefs of Staff on a rotational assignment in the Directorate for Intelligence as the first mission manager for intelligence. So when we talk about a mission, we need to define what is a mission. And a mission is different from a vision, it's different from values. They're all related to each other. But a mission, simply put, is what an organization does, what they exist to accomplish and to do. So using my current job, for example, I'm currently deployed with the Department of Defense. Their job is to provide security for the United States, forward presence, and if need be, to blow stuff up. That is what the DoD does. Other parts of the federal government do different things too. Department of Energy has, among its other missions, security for our nation's nuclear power system. Department of Transportation manages the federal highway system. A vision is related to a mission, but it's the end state. It's something that you will never actually achieve. It's something you're always going towards. So when we talk about mission and vision, it's important to keep these things differentiated. When we discuss mission specifically, we're talking about actions. What do we do? How do we do it? What are we trying to get done? So that's a mission. So now we go to defining mission management. Mission management is something that was created almost 15 years ago, back in the early 2000s in the post 9/11 world, as a way to get the U.S. government focused on accomplishing a goal versus doing a bunch of stuff really well in stovepipes. So when you're talking about national security, it can mean a bunch of different things. Collection of intelligence, analysis of what's happening, science technologies as it relates to protecting the homeland. Big data is a huge thing that not just the government, but private sector is involved in now. Operations, actually conducting operations, supporting policymakers, and a whole bunch of other things. The problem is a lot of different parts of the government are really, really good at one or two things. And it doesn't work until you get to the highest level where you actually integrate that. Initially, the National Security Council, as created in 1947, was designed to be the place where all that was done. However, you can't have that level of government coordinating amongst all the agencies for the first time. And so after 9/11, it was determined that this was now a problem. It took them a long time to figure this out. So mission managers were created as part of the IRPTA, the Intelligence Prevention and Terrorist Reform Act of 2004. And specifically, they're created within the Office of Director of National Intelligence to coordinate across US agencies that did analysis, collection, operations, kind of technology below the level of the White House. Why this matters is each part of a mission is discrete in what it does. So the CIA, for example, is really, really good at doing intelligence analysis, and they're good at operations. The Defense Intelligence Agency, where I'm currently forward deployed to in support of the Pentagon and Joint Chiefs, is good at military intelligence and military intelligence operations and collection gathering. But up until you get to the highest levels, at one point, these were not coordinated. And so they have to work together to achieve a mission, a holistic thing you're trying to get done. So the mission manager's job is to work across the agencies to make sure that what's being done is in concert with a national strategy, national policy, what policymakers want, and all the issues are dealt with prior to getting to the highest levels of government. So we talked about what a mission is, what mission management is. So what is a mission manager? Well, that's me. This is my second job as a mission manager in the government, and it's very similar to a program manager in that you have to have a visible insight into everything that's happening while at the same time understanding the end goal you're trying to get. The difference between program management and mission management is the end goals are usually pretty different. We'll talk about that in a minute. So you have to have a base knowledge of the things that you're overseeing. And keep in mind, you're not in charge. Mission managers aren't in charge of anything. You don't own the stuff. You don't own the assets. You don't own the people. You don't own the finances. Your job is to coordinate so that way they all understand the end goal you're trying to reach. You're managing the mission holistically. You also are responsible for creating those plans and strategies that those different functions can align to. Where I work, there are different strategies. There's a national security strategy, a national defense strategy, a national intelligence strategy, and all these drive towards big picture things like super high level, like Russia bad is part of the national defense strategy. So everything that's done in the Department of Defense is aligned to one of those big strategies. The mission manager's job is to make sure that all the small things that are being done are going in the same direction. And part of how you do this is you use your expertise to tell and advise senior executives on what to do and how to change priorities. Just like in business, government's based upon priorities. And priorities usually mean money, resource, leadership, visibility is attached to it. So if priority increases, more resources being put towards it, but you can't wait for someone at the secretary level or the White House to say this is a priority. You need to inform them ahead of time. This is important because of X. And finally, you have to make sure that your executives understand why this matters and how they should deal with other executives too. In most cases, you don't get to be at a senior level in either the private sector or the public sector without being smart, in most cases. But you can't have visible knowledge about everything all the time, always, so you need your staff to do it. Unfortunately, if you're only hearing from an expert in a certain discipline, you're only getting their side of the story. It's the mission manager's job to make sure that everything is integrated, put together, and then finally, some advice is given to those who can actually make decisions. Let's compare program management to mission management. To be a good program manager, you have to have the skills that you see on the slide here. And there's skills that Alpha Kappa Psi teaches you. There's skills that you learn in business school and any other school, whether you're in undergrad or you've been in the corporate world. It's a lot of flexibility. It's a very high level definition because every project is different, every program is different. Mission management is basically the same skill set. The biggest difference here, you see highlighted in purple, is you're not benefit focused. In this case, a program management benefit might be the stakeholders, the shareholders, the company's bottom line, profit. Instead, you're mission focused. What are you trying to achieve in support of a national level objective? And that's the difference between program management and mission management. Mission management is program management, but not all program management is mission management. So let's go a little further down into the weeds here. When you're talking about project management, which is a subsection of a program, you're doing quick turn deliverables based upon a discrete task. These are temporary things that usually have a relatively quick turnaround. You need to have good management skills, finances, risk. You have to have everything that you would learn in undergrad management school, like I did. And where you're aligned depends on what the program manager says, this is your lane in the road to achieve. Now, for program management, it's a longer thing. A program is something that goes on, not in perpetuity, but goes on for a long time, versus a project, which is relatively short term. And you have to have broadly defined objectives for a program. So a project might be, you need to increase retention by 10%. A program might be, our retention overall will increase our ability to do X by this date. And you figure out how that's done. From a mission management standpoint, you use a lot of the skills, but it's a little bit different, partially because of the lowercase p politics involved. And that means you have to align to national strategies. Within the DoD, where I currently work right now, there are 5 things that DoD cares about: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and terrorists. And basically everything we do in DoD has to be aligned to go against those things. It's all public knowledge. It's all part of the national defense strategy. That means, though, that how you do your mission, yes, it's aligned to those strategies, but also is informed by the politics of the day. And as a federal employee, my job and my responsibility is to be apolitical. It doesn't matter which party is in power, which party has the White House or Congress. You have to do what the law says you have to do. And those are based upon the strategies that are decided on by politicians and those who are elected into office and appointed into those offices. So that's the difference, is the mission is what an agency does and how you're trying to coordinate against a big target, but you're also trying to deal with the politics of the day. Now, at my level, we deal a lot with committee meetings at the White House and with the Congress. And so we have to take their stakeholder views into account as well, versus if you're in program management or project management, you're taking into account how is this affecting the bottom line. Not saying one's better than the other, but it's important to understand this is the environment you work in as a mission manager. So national security mission managers are everywhere, and a lot of agencies define them relatively differently, but pretty much the same. And it's how we described it earlier. You are responsible for taking individual things that an agency might do really well, putting it together, integrating it, and then giving one voice to those people who can make decisions and actually move assets, do something about the problem that they are trying to address based upon the best information possible. So you can see on the screen here, we have a whole bunch of different agency seals on here. Everyone uses them differently. If you are a mission manager at, for example, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, you're responsible for taking pictures from the sky. If you're a mission manager at Department of Justice and the FBI, you might be responsible for criminal activities within the United States or overseas with your liaison. And you need to understand how each agency functions and what parts do what, so that way you can have a holistic view and holistic decision made to affect that problem as best possible. So that is mission management in a nutshell. It's relatively high level. It's hard to define only because it's done differently everywhere else. And the first time it was really put into practice was in law in 2004. It's still evolving. And the skills that you can learn in Alpha Kappa Psi or in business school can definitely apply in mission management in national security. And so with that, I'll open up to any questions there might be.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mike. So as we did say earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or use the raise hand feature, and we will allow you to ask a question verbally. So first question I have for you, Mike, is a lot of people might not know a lot about national intelligence, national security, whatnot. If somebody's interested in getting into this line of work, what are kind of the best tips for learning more about it and getting into it?
Great question. So back when I worked for Booz Allen, I used to do a lot of job fairs. I haven't done any since I joined the government. The first thing is you got to do well in school. To be in national security requires a certain degree of education, of experience, and of success in both in the classroom and out the classroom. The ability to be trusted is also important. The jobs that are national security, most of them require security clearance. And to get that, you have to have gone through a background investigation to show that you can be trusted with secrets. And so things like drug use, breaking the law, a lot of foreign travel to places that are not couth with the U.S. government are things that might derail that. Skill sets that you want to focus on. Cyber is a big one. Everyone cares about cyber. It's cyber all the time. Big data is also something that the government's hungry for, only because they are fighting with Amazon and Google for the same people, but the government can only pay so much money, and Amazon and Google pay a lot more. So focused on being clean cut as best you possibly can. And also getting some of those skill sets are important. And finally, if you have language skills, that's a big thing too. A lot of US citizens don't have good language skills. So if you can differentiate yourself by being fluent in a language that people want, that helps.
All right. And so you outlined the difference between the project management, program management, and mission management. What might sway someone to be interested in one versus the other? What are the different benefits of going one direction?
So putting money aside, I can tell you that the money is different in the private sector than it is in the public sector. A lot of it has to do with what's your motivation. If you're motivated by the mission, and I know we use that term a lot in this presentation, then that's something that might sway you towards national security or working for the public sector. The end result is what you're going for, and you may or may not get the publicity that might be accorded to in the private sector, but it can be very fulfilling knowing that you affected something that may have saved lives or protected someone or something. Conversely, if you are very interested in a lot of flexibility, a lot of potential for moving up, and a lot of variety in your job, then working in the private sector might be an option. When I worked for Booz Allen for 13 years, the variety of things I was able to do was really, really neat, and actually set me up really well for what I'm doing right now in the national security sector.
So how have you been able to take the skills that you've learned from your previous jobs, from your organizations in AKSI, that's helped you be successful in your role?
So I was thinking about this, and as an Alpha Kappa Psi volunteer, one of the things that I have learned over my nearly 20 years in the organization is that there is no power in being a volunteer. There's no, I hereby direct you to do something and someone has to salute and say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, go for it. It's very much based upon influence and working with people. And it's very much based upon helping them understand why this is important either for the organization or for them personally. And that applies in mission management incredibly well. And I really give that a lot of credit to how I've been successful. Like I said earlier, mission managers don't own anything. I don't own the analysis. I don't own the collection. I don't own the operations. My job is to get that information, synthesize it, and then push it to someone that can make a decision in a way that they can understand, and it gives them the whole picture. And in order to do that, you have to build relationships. You have to be very effusive to those people who are experts and help them understand, yes, I'm not trying to take what you're doing and take it for myself. I'm trying to make this better for the following reasons. And you do the same thing in AKSI. As a volunteer leader, I'm a chapter advisor right now. I don't own what the chapter does. I have to work with the chapter executive board to get them to do what is necessary to keep their chapter successful. So it's very similar skill sets with just different words being used.
So what advice do you have for somebody that might not have any idea what they want to go into, but they have some of these skill sets? What might encourage somebody to want to go in this direction?
So I would, yes, I'm biased, but I would recommend doing the path or going on the path that I did, which was go in the private sector first, because you have a lot more flexibility in what you do, where you work, and in moving around and in your projects than you would in the government sector. They're both very rewarding, but because I spent so long at Booz Allen doing a whole bunch of different things, that helped me understand in relatively short order what I was passionate about, what I wasn't passionate about, what I was good at, what I wasn't good at. And then when I became a federal employee, that really helped me identify this is the kind of job I want to target. And the government's designed to move slow, for better or for worse. And so while I was at Booz Allen, I might be doing like a 3-month project and I'll get a whole bunch of skill sets. Whereas right now, my assignment with the Joint Chiefs, it's a 2-year rotation with an option for a third. And so it's not like I can turn over relatively quickly. So I'm glad I had that experience at the beginning part of my career versus now.
All right, so not seeing any other questions at the moment. Mike, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share kind of about mission management and your experience in national security?
I would say that without my time in Alpha Kappa Psi, without my time in the private sector, I would not have the skill sets and the success I have now in my professional life. What I learned within the fraternity, what I learned in the private sector have definitely helped me become a better employee and a better servant to you as a taxpayer. So hopefully this has been very helpful, and I'm always open to any questions after the fact.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Just one last final thank you for Mike for his time, for knowledge, and everything he shared with us today. And a thank you to everybody that's joined in. So one last reminder, make sure you guys log into the MyAKSI community. You can engage with other members in the collaboration groups and register for more upcoming sessions in the events tab. So again, thank you for attending, and we'll see you in the MyAKSI community.